But I believe Congressman LaHood might be on the line now.
I am, John. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate that. I know you have a very busy schedule, so really appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thanks so much, John and Hannah and your entire team and everybody on the call. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I was on for a few minutes there, John, just before I joined, and got to listen a little bit of your update on the Clean Start piece of legislation. And for those of you that are on the call, I'm Congressman Darren LaHood. I represent a district in central Illinois. So Peoria, Illinois is my hometown. I represent 19 counties across central, west central Illinois, and I serve on the Ways and Means Committee. And I couldn't be prouder to introduce this piece of legislation and to work with all of you on the call, and obviously ISSA and Stephanie Murphy, my Democrat colleague, also on the Ways and Means Committee from Florida. We think the legislation makes a lot of sense in terms of our response to COVID. As everybody knows on the call, you know, we have appropriated and allocated over $3 trillion through the CARES Act and a number of other pieces of legislation in response to COVID, you know, to address many different things on the health side and also on the economic side. And as we move forward to the next round of stimulus, which I anticipate we won't vote on till the middle to the end of July, maybe the last thing we vote on at the end of July. But when we look at what businesses are struggling with, and when I look at my district, as we continue to deal with COVID, you know, the biggest issue obviously is making sure that the cleaning requirements, sanitation, deep cleaning where it's required, that those issues are addressed. And so when we got together, and by the way, I should say I have a number of cleaning businesses in my district that have large operations across multiple states. And so I understand it from the perspective of businesses in my own district. And so we think this legislation will be very beneficial to businesses as they begin to transition and opening up, giving them that tax benefit to incentivize them to engage in the cleaning process that needs to be done. And the legislation, as John may have mentioned, is temporary. We hope, obviously, we have a vaccine or a treatment or a cure sometime in the next year here. But for now, we have to deal with the ramifications of COVID. And liability is a big issue. And separate from our bill, we have to make sure liability protection is part of the next stimulus package. That particularly for small, medium-sized businesses, but for schools and every entity, because the last thing businesses that want to worry about is being sued by a personal injury attorney or you know, having to deal with litigation related to this. So that really is a red line for us moving forward. And we think obviously our bill coincides with that. Again, the cost associated with this cleaning, which is at a whole nother level than anybody anticipated before COVID hit. But we have seen where that cleaning is done, where the guidelines are abided by, and where the implementation is done. That's going to help with stopping and preventing the spread of COVID. And so we are working hard to gain co-sponsors to continue to educate our colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats in the House, to do that. And I would just urge, and I know John mentioned this to you, to contact your elected officials, your senators and your House members, and ask them to co-sponsor our bill and work towards getting this passed. We anticipate that, and by the way, we have not heard any negative comments or any concerns. If anything, what some have said is it's too small. You need to go bigger. Obviously, we are focused on small and medium-sized businesses. We have not included nonprofits. We haven't included a number of others, but we think it makes sense. We think we've structured it the right way, and obviously will be beneficial for again, we'll go back to what are we looking at in a stimulus bill? We want to help out the health care crisis that we're in and also the economic crisis. And I think our bill serves both of those purposes. So, John, I know I mentioned a lot there, but happy to open up for questions, or I'm happy to talk further about, you know, the timeline and schedule or anything else that you may have.
No, that's really great. I know Hannah. I'm sure we've been getting some questions that we can pitch your way. I guess one of the things I know that well, first off, just want to thank you on behalf of the association and really being taking the lead on this. It's just it's been great. You've been such a great supporter of this, and really can't thank you enough on behalf of our 9,300 members across the country and across the world. So it's just been really great to hear that. So really want to thank you first off. I know one thing that Lori brought up that you were probably not on the call for, but I know you're very engaged on the trade issues, especially with China and tariffs. Can you maybe give us an update? I know that's an issue of passion for you. That's also of very interest to our members.
Sure, John. I currently serve as the co-chair of the U.S.-China Working Group in the House of Representatives. That's a bipartisan working group that deals with issues related to China. Separately from that, our Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, just appointed me to a separate China task force that is focused on issues post-COVID. And so we are working diligently, myself and 14 other members, on coming up with a comprehensive plan on how we deal with China. Obviously, with COVID, there is a lot of interest in really going after China and holding them accountable for good reason, I should say. The lack of transparency as related to what happened in Wuhan and the virus, the deceitfulness on behalf of the Chinese has caused many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to be extremely frustrated and really interested in going after China. So what does that mean? John, we are up to, I think, 350 pieces of legislation and resolutions that have been introduced in the House and the Senate going after China. A lot of that deals with supply chains. A lot of that deals with decoupling. I think what we've seen in COVID over the last 3 months is the vulnerability of the U.S., our vulnerability when it comes to generic drugs, when it comes to PPE, when it comes to pharmaceuticals. We are heavily reliant on China. Now, as you may know, these supply chains are complicated, they're nuanced, they're intricate. A lot of them involve third parties. So I mentioned that only because I think the immediate reaction to a lot of members of Congress is, oh, we're just going to pull back from China and bring everything back. Well, that's easier, I think, said than done. It's a complicated issue. So our China task force is focused on, if we are going to do that, how do you do that? What is the cost to the U.S. taxpayer, or how do you incentivize doing that? You mentioned tariffs and other issues or other mechanisms that potentially could be used. Of course, we have a phase one deal too, John, that's separate from all this. That went into effect on February 14th. That's the trade deal that President Trump signed. I was at the White House. I worked extensively on that. And that is in place right now. So China has an obligation and a responsibility to buy upwards to $200 billion in products between now and the end of the year. About 60 billion of that is agriculture commodities, many of them from my district in central and west central Illinois. And so the trading relationship with China is important. It's important for our economy, whether it's ag or other industries, particularly in manufacturing. And so I think it's a delicate balance that we're in right now. But in Congress, again, there is a palpable adversarial relationship building against China. So I think when we think about the future, I think it would be a mistake to pull the plug on the phase one deal. But let's remember how we got to phase one with China. This administration implemented tariffs. They implemented tariffs over the last 2 years. We were essentially in a tariff war with China. And again, I'm not generally a fan of tariffs. I think tariffs are taxes. They're taxes on consumers and businesses. But this administration, I think, used tariffs in an effective way to bring the Chinese to the table to negotiate a deal. We'll see if it holds up and see if China abides by what they've said they're going to do. They have had a history of not doing that. So again, I think we have to be careful about getting back into a tariff war, whether it's with China or others around the world. I think that hurts us long term. And again, I think that's those are taxes that are again paid by taxpayers in this country. But I think we're in uncharted waters right now when it comes to China. A lot will depend on how China responds to COVID. Thus far, they have not been very forthcoming. I think we're waiting to see whether that changes at all moving forward. But there's a lot on the plate. And by the way, our task force also is dealing with issues related to competitiveness, related to espionage, related to 5 and 6G, and Huawei and technology issues. And so there's a lot of issues on the table right now with China. I would not say we have crossed into a Cold War mentality, although I think there are some that want to do that. But we are in a very, tricky relationship with China right now, and we got to make sure that we make the right decisions moving forward for the country. So that's a long answer to your question, John.
Thank you so much, Congressman LaHood. This is Hannah from ISSA here. I'm very, very thankful that you're here, but we have a couple of questions for you. If you're okay with that, we can just jump right into those.
Sure.
Okay. So this one's kind of a multiple question in one. And it says, how would the Clean Start tax credit help my cleaning business? What is the current status of this proposal, and what can I do to help increase the likelihood of the proposal being included in the next federal stimulus bill?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. I think taking the last part first, I think obviously building a coalition, getting, in Congress, obviously I'm one of 435 representatives, and Stephanie Murphy's obviously one of the group that we serve with. So, I mean, and people on the call know this, and I know Hannah and John know it. I mean, members of Congress are busy. They have their own priorities, and so what we've been doing is educating members. And obviously, members of Congress listen to their constituency. So wherever you're at around the country, talk directly to your member of Congress, schedule a meeting, talk to their staff, talk to your U.S. senators about the importance and what this means. To the first part of your question, what does this mean for your business? Obviously, as the country continues to open back up, cleaning, sanitation, all of these requirements are going to be a huge part of businesses coming back into business. And so if you're a cleaning business, obviously it's going to be beneficial to you. This will incentivize, again, companies across the board, across this country, to take advantage of the tax credit, so they can get a little break on what they're doing. In some cases, a lot of a break, but they're going to have to hire companies and that are involved in cleaning to do a lot of that. Some of that they'll be able to do on their own, depending on the size and the scope of the business. But listen, this is going to be with us for a while here, and so it helps out obviously your cleaning business, because you're going to have more of it, and secondly, incentivizes people to contact your businesses because they're going to be getting a tax break to do that. Some businesses may not be able to open up unless they have the ability to have this tax credit to help them get through this. Again, it incentivizes and helps with those kind of dual purposes that our stimulus bills have dealt with, which is the healthcare crisis and the economic crisis.
Thank you so much. We have another question here for you. And it says, in researching the Clean Start Back to Works tax credit, it states that in order to qualify, the cleaning service provider must be certified. For a service provider to be certified, they need an industry recognized certificate in custodial cleaning or cleaning management by a qualified third party. What certification are they requiring, or what do you recommend?
I don't know the specifics on that. I mean, listen, I know in the state of Illinois, we have a state authorization for that, or a certification. My understanding is every state is different in terms of that. So again, I'd have to have Ashley on my staff, or maybe the Ways and Means staff, get some clarification. So happy to follow up on that in terms of what is the threshold or what are the requirements on the certification. I would assume if you're certified in your particular state, wherever you're domiciled at as a cleaning company, that would qualify. But we can follow up on that, Hannah.
Yeah, let me just, if you don't mind, Hannah, I'll just kind of dovetail into that. The way that, at least my interpretation of the legislation, which I think was crafted very well by LaHood's office and Ways and Means, is that it's broad enough to where it incentivizes and encourages those to get proper training to how to use some of these chemicals and products, but also not overly burdensome to where it's, this huge mandate, right? So, obviously, if you're already ISSA certified, or maybe you have your own internal training and certification process, those would generally qualify under this. So, it's intended to incentivize kind of increased training and certification, but it's not necessarily, preclude you from doing the cleaning, if that makes any sense. So.
Thank you so much to Congressman Darren LaHood for joining us today, for John Noderf and Lori Flanagan of ISSA and DCLRS for an amazing and informative presentation. What a treat for our audience to hear from the Congressman today. I want to thank all of our attendees for participating and asking questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the ISSA staff if you have any additional questions on these topics. We're more than happy to get back to you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Thank you so much, Congressman LaHood, for your time today. We're very, very thankful to have you. And with that, we want to thank everyone for attending the webinar. Until next time.